The Habakkuk reading is very dramatic, so I wasn't sure how much you might need a warning before I say. The oracle of God, which Habakkuk the prophet saw. O Lord, how long shall we cry for help, and thou wilt not hear? Or cry to thee, violence, and thou wilt not save? Why do you make me see the wrongs and look upon trouble? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise all around me. And so the law is loosened, and justice does not go forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, and justice goes forth perverted. This is an interesting collection of readings that we have for today. The book of Job tells us that we are best to come to grief as mystery. The less we speak, according to the book of Job, the more we wait, the more we are in line with God's will. So I could go all Quaker on you and just be silent for the next 10 minutes. In preparing, I know that everything that I say about grief will be wrong for someone here who's listening. I pray also for your patience with all of that. But how long do we wait? Did Jesus wait too long when Martha and Mary sent word to him? It sure sounds like it from what everybody said. If you had been here. And the first sister goes out and says, well, okay, whatever craziness you're going to say, sure, I believe that. And then she nods and smiles and goes back and gets her sister and says, you drive. If you had been here, he weeps. And still Jews watching say, if he had been here. Or did he come too soon? Because what comes next in that story, of course, he raises Lazarus, but then what comes next is that the Jews, the leaders of the Jews and the political leaders say, we cannot be having this. This man will turn everything upside down once he starts raising the dead. And we head straight into the story of the Passion Week from there. Did Jesus come too soon? Most of the Bible comes out of this question. Jesus came, and then things went weird, and he was gone, and then he's coming, but not quite yet. But when is he coming? Your people are dying, they're being persecuted. When are you coming? And the Old Testament is written in the context of the exile. It's literally written by the rivers of Babylon. That is where the people started to wonder. They had their oral histories, and they started to wonder, so did Yahweh want us to have a land? How did that work? And did he want us to have it for like how long? And so they went over their stories of Abraham and the patriarchs, and then Joseph goes to Egypt, and they are there for generations and generations. But they come back, and they are saved, and they are called back to the land. And they go through great battles for that, and there are judges, and the kings, and then the diaspora, disaster. And out of that comes the Hebrew Bible, our Old Testament. How long is this going to go on? And why? There are verses around the ones that we have read today that are not so child-friendly. If you want to read the ending of the song that we often sing about by the waters of Babylon, it talks about smashing babies' heads on rocks. If you want to read the next chapters of Habakkuk, it's actually an argument between God and Habakkuk about how God says, yeah, I see you. There's lots of violence. There's lots of stuff going on in the land. Justice is gone. And so I am going to bring in these other police people that are going to straighten everything out. And that's where Habakkuk says, God, why are you making me watch all this stuff? And God says, oh, but justice. And Habakkuk says, but God, your people. And so in all of this grief, how do we grieve in the midst of systemic, huge things that are happening, and the daily things that are happening, and the big things that are happening to each of us individually? How do we sing our songs of faith when the land changes around us? Like the psalmist wrote, how do we sing our holy songs in a strange land? The Jews had their diaspora. Africans call their diaspora that happened in the 14, 15, 1600s the Mafa, the devastation. Something I learned about when we lived in West Africa and what Wes is back among right now, but it's also here. The Mafa is the word for what is beyond words, of the taking of not a small part, but the majority of the healthy, the wise, the fertile, the children, the strong, taking those people across the ocean. More than half of whom died on the trip. And there are hundreds of years of struggle here. And what was left of the people left behind, and how they have been trying to rebuild their lands in that time. That struggle around the world is given the word Limofah. I don't know what word different Indian tribes use for what has happened on their land here. I do know, I read this week, someone who found from an ancestor's writing, a white person ancestor's writing, who was a farmer in the early 1800s on the East Coast. And he wrote about how, noticing how things change. When you clear the forests, when you start digging up the soil, when you plant different things, when you clear out all the animals, the weather actually changed. I know this from where my grandparents were among the generation that plowed up the prairies. It was the generation before them that killed off the buffalo, that fertilized the great grasslands, and kept the weeds under control. Farmers came in after the bison were killed off and plowed them up. And then by the end of their farming lives, they watched their topsoil blow 500 miles away. And we call that the Dirty 30s, the Great Depression. We have words now like climate crisis, the Great Extinction. These are words that we use to try to capture large experiences. They're different words for grief. One way or another, grief is our experience of losing part of ourselves. Whether it's the food that we need to eat, whether it's losing a part of our body. Sometimes grief is small, like losing part of your skin, a little scratch, you can kind of get past it. Sometimes grief is like having your arm ripped off or having your bowels pulled out. Sometimes it's huge, it's physical, and our bodies respond in all kinds of ways. I was actually put on the schedule for today, not just because my husband has gone across the ocean, but also because we wanted to talk about climate change, climate justice, as we've been talking about. And it turned out that it was easier to talk, it was necessary to talk about the hope part of that and the inspiration part of that at a time when there was a lot that was happening around the country a couple of weeks ago. But a big part of what makes dealing with these global issues so difficult is our grief. What do we do? What do we do when we are losing what is so important to us? And whether that's part of your family or part of your health, or part of your life, part of your community, what do you do? The prophet tells us, Jesus tells us, that we are right to call out. We can lose our Germanic British heritage of just trying to stuff it down. We can claim our faith tradition that comes from other cultures and cry out. Grief is not the same as sadness. I've been careful to use those words separately in talking with the children and talking here. We've heard, at the beginning of my career, there was the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross about the stages of grief. Anybody remember anything about the stages of grief? Yeah, all right. Somebody shout them out there from the back.
Denial, anger, I can't keep them all straight, but
Mm-hmm.
denial, anger, acceptance, I think I mentioned.
Bargaining.
Bargain.
There's one more.
I remember it by Dabda,
Uh-huh. So denial.
anger,
Mm-hmm.
letting bargaining,
Mm-hmm.
Dabda,
Uh-huh.
depression.
Yeah, there's a withdrawal, a depression, a silencing, and then what she called acceptance. So it's really important to know that she was looking at a very particular kind of grief. She was looking at a certain population who were dealing with the diagnosis of cancer. And as people have tried to use those words to look at grief in other settings, we realize those aren't stages, those are different phases of grief. In some ways they're like seasons. They may be stages, but we go round and round and round. And just like spring is followed by summer, and summer is followed by fall, and then there's winter, and then spring breaks through. Living through grief is like that. There are different parts of it, different experiences of it. I wanted to call the service today Autumn and Grief, because the seasons of nature help me with living my life organically. To remember that when I'm tired of picking green beans, I can rest for a night and pick something else. And the beans, they will die on the vine and they will dry. And I can cook them up during the winter and I can save some to plant. I can take my getting soft garlic bulbs and put it in the dirt. I can take those parts of me that I'm really tired of and let them rest where they are and see what seeds come out of that. If we do not plant seeds, apple seeds, and bulbs, we will not have apple trees and flowers, or garlic for that matter. If nature fought cocooning, when I was going through menopause, I just really have a lot of empathy for caterpillars going into cocoon. Like, I know what my body looked like going into this, and I have some hopes about what it's going to be like coming through, but that must be a mess in that cocoon. What if nature said, no thank you, I am good. I am not going to wrap myself up and melt and be reformed. And yet that is the way of life. And so, when you feel your body melting and reforming, when you feel your life melting and reforming, try to remember the mystery of the butterfly. We have in our sacred word a prophet crying out verses that have become so meaningful to the Black Lives Matter movement and to refugees. No long explanation, just crying out, naming it, violence. And we wait for God to respond. We say, God, we can't even sing our songs of faith right now. But let the words of our mouths and what meditations come into our hearts be accepted. And we know that they will be. And so, if we can remember to stay with nature, part of our Creator's world, things will come around somehow. You can go back to the opening psalm that also written during the time of the exile, said, do not fret about the evildoers. Wait. And I hope sometime this week that will come back to you, the song that we sang. Be still. God will fight your battles if you just be still. Somehow, if we can stay engaged with God, if we can stay engaged with our Savior Jesus, who came and was reshaped in the womb of a woman and born and lived and died and came out of the tomb, I believe. Somehow in this mystery we can stay engaged with God. And so we close today with singing how the exiles often came, sometimes with the better part of the generation, but they sang in faith in what eventually happened. They talked about sowing in tears, weeping, going forth and weeping, but coming back in joy. And so while I want your heart to be open within you about what you are grieving, what seems beyond words, we also, I'm going to ask Paul to come and start playing, we also are going to sing. Those of us who are grieving may sing it as an act of the mouth. Those of us who might feel the beat can start to sing it as part of the body and the will. But together we can remind each other that even when we go forth, even when we sow in tears, we shall reap in joy. And we go out weeping, and we will come back.